So I've come to this MS Paint document. Before I go into the activities, let me give you a brief picture. And I'm not getting into what SAP is, all these things, because you have already worked into it. So I'm just trying to go directly into the main activity. So the whole process, whatever we are doing, the focus will be on understanding. Let me just increase the font size also. Just give me a minute. Just a minute. Just trying to increase. Okay. Now, when we talk about the various activities, now we know that in any, just a minute, there's some problem with this thing. Just a minute. I'm just trying to increase the size here. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So increase the font size. Now, what are we trying to do is, in this whole course, we'll be focusing on 3 important areas. So we'll be talking about first the role of functional consultants. So we'll try to understand what are the various activities which the functional consultant is going to do. The primary focus will be on that. Then once we complete this, we'll come into the second important area, that is the activities of end user. So I'll tell you who this person is, and once we complete this, we'll be getting into the third important area, like what a support consultant will be doing. So the overall focus will be on these 3 roles actually. First, we'll try to understand what a functional consultant is going to do. Then we'll come to the end user side. And then we'll get into the support consultants activities. Okay. Now, when we say a functional consultant, obviously his primary responsibility will be to ensure that the company moves successfully from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment. Now, let's say as a consultant, as a functional consultant, if I come to your company, the first thing what I'll be doing is I'll try to understand the various requirements of your company. Then can you just mute yourself? I'm just able to hear some sounds. So the first thing what he'll be doing is, let's say if I come to your company as a functional consultant, and your company is planning to move from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment. First, I'll try to understand the various requirements of your company. I'll try to understand how the accounting process is going on in your company. What are the various accounts which your company is using? Who are your vendors? Who are your customers? So I'll take all this information from various people who are working in the accounts and finance department. And based on that requirement, first I'll create a blueprint. This is something which we call as a business blueprint. So I'm trying to ensure that whatever are your requirements, I'm going to document that. That will be my first important role. Now, based on this blueprint, as a functional consultant, my responsibility will be to configure the software. So when I'm trying to configure the software, in fact, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to activate. In one way, I'll say activate only those areas which are needed for your company. SAP is a global software. It has got every requirement of every company located in any part of the world. Now, as a functional consultant, I am trying to understand your company's requirements, and as per your requirement, I am trying to configure the software. Now, this process may not happen in a day or two. When you go to any real-time environment, it can take somewhere between, I'd say, 4 months to 8 months, depending on the size of the company or depending on the requirements of the company. So my work as a functional consultant is to ensure that I take the company from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment. So when I say my work, it doesn't mean that I'll be the only person. The various people, the team will be there. All of them will ensure that the company is moving successfully from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment. Now, once everything has been configured, once everything has been activated in the SAP software, the role of a functional consultant in the project is over. He will hand over the software to the company. Like, let's say if I am coming to your company as a consultant, I have activated everything which is needed for you. So once that part is over, I'll hand over the software to you and I'll be moving to a different project. My role is only to ensure that your company is moving successfully from a non-SAP environment to SAP environment. So once that process is over, I'll hand over the software to your company and I'll be moving to a different project. Then in your company, the second role will start. The second role is that of an end user. Who is an end user? Person who is using the software. Now, from the accounts and finance point of view, example, I'll say someone like an accountant or someone like a cashier. So what are these people doing? They are into day-to-day activities. Whatever is happening in the whole organization, these activities are recorded by the end user. Now their role is nothing different. Earlier they were doing the same thing in a different software. Now they are trying to do that in the SAP software. Now whenever they are recording the day-to-day activities, it's quite possible that sometimes the system might give some errors. So it might give you a message saying that you cannot record the transaction for so and so reason. Whenever the system is giving an error, the user doesn't know how to rectify this error. Now he's primarily responsible only for recording of all the day-to-day activities. In case if the system is giving any error, there has to be someone to help the end user. That's where the third person will come into picture, whom we call as a support consultant. Now what is his responsibility? His responsibility is to ensure that whatever the errors which the end user is getting, these errors are rectified. So I'll say his responsibility will be to rectify the errors. Now what are we doing in the whole course is, on a step-by-step process, we'll be understanding all the three roles. We'll be starting with the role of the functional consultants, then we'll be coming to the end user side, and then we'll come into the support side also. On a step-by-step process, we'll try to understand all these three roles. Okay? So in any project, the first role will always be that of a functional consultant. He's going to understand the various requirements of a company, and as per that requirement, he's going to configure the software. That software will be used by the end user to record all the day-to-day activities which are happening in the organization, and then depending on the errors, the role of a support consultant will come into picture. Now before we go into the functional consultant's activities, there are some things which we need to understand about SAP actually. So let me remove this first. So when I say SAP is an application software. We use a term known as an application software. So whenever I try to go and try to understand what an application software is, there is a technology which is used by SAP, which is known as a client-to-server technology. So to put in a layman's terminology, like when I say client server technology, you may feel that it's a lot of technical things are there. To put in simple terms, whenever I'm trying to record any kind of transaction, the data will always move from one system to other system. You have two basic systems. One is known as a client system, or this is something which we call as the front end system. So front end system, whatever the end user is going to do, he'll try to record that in the front end system. And whatever we are recording in the front end system, from here it moves to the server system. Server system will not be visible to us. This is the back end. Now in the server system, you will be having the database. Whatever we are recording in the front end system, from here it comes to the back end system and it gets stored in the database. The reason why I'm supposed to store in the database, let's tomorrow if there is some requirement, I want to check that particular data or I have to see that particular transaction, then I can always retrieve the data from the database and I can once again bring it back to the client system. I can see that particular transaction. Now how does this data move now? How is it that the data is moving from the client system to the server system? There has to be some link, there has to be some kind of connection between these two systems. Otherwise the data will not move automatically from the client system to the server system. Now this link is provided by using SAP GUI. So let me put that here. Just give me a minute. So when I say, increase the size of it. So when you say SAP GUI, using your GUI, the full form of GUI is graphical user interface. So for the time being, we'll understand that this is something which connects the client system to the server system. So whatever data which I am recording in the client system, from the client system, it moves to the server system and it gets connected via this particular GUI. Now once I install this GUI, I'll be getting an SAP logon pad that will be visible to you on my monitor. I'll show you that. Using this logon pad, I'll be logging into the SAP software. So once I install this GUI, I'll get this logon pad. Just give me 1 minute. I'll just try to show that, and it's not visible to me here. I'll just try to use my search option. Just give me a minute. Taking through here. Just 1 minute. I'm just trying to check. Just 1 minute. Yeah. Must be there here because I'm not. Yeah. Just give me a minute. I've already installed it here, but this is not my system. So I'm just finding it. It's going to just give me 1 minute. I'll just check up because it's my son's system. I just ask him to come and check it. Just give me 1 minute, huh? Just give me a minute. Okay. What we are going to do is, in our whole course, we'll be discussing about the FI, that is your financial accounting module, and we'll also be talking about the CO part, that will be the controlling module. So when I say FI, what is the primary objective of FI? From FI, I'll be generating a profit and loss statement and balance sheet of a company. I'll be generating the financial statements. Now this is something which gives you the overall picture of the organization, how the whole company is performing. Now in order to generate the financial statements, it's not that I'll be buying the software today and from the next day I can start recording the transactions. There are some background activities which we are supposed to do, which starts with the first important thing. It starts with the basic settings of FI. So when I say basic settings, if I want to generate the financial statements of a company, it's quite obvious that I have to start with defining of a company, like which is the company. For that company, I'll be recording all the day-to-day activities. And at the end of the year, for this company, I'll be generating the financial statements. Now, apart from that, once I create this company, I need to compulsorily specify what is the fiscal year this company is following. So when I say fiscal year, I need to specify whether my company is following a calendar year, which starts in the month of January and ends in the month of December, or is my company following a financial year which can be from April to March, or is my company following a calendar year? Apart from April to March, it's quite possible that some of the companies might follow the year from July to June. Now this way, there are some mandatory settings which I have to do compulsorily. Once these mandatory settings are over, it's only after that I can go into the major activities. So what are these? Once I complete these basic settings, let me just remove this. Just give me 1 minute. The next thing what we'll be doing is, we'll be getting into the second important area. Just give me a minute, I'll take you to a new one, otherwise not saving it. Just give one. The next important thing what we'll be doing is, we'll go into the general ledger. We'll increase the font size. Once we complete the basic settings, the second area which we'll be talking about, this will be about the general ledger. See, now what do I mean by general ledger? Let's say from the accounting point of view, I want to record a transaction, something like this: salary account, debit, bank account. If at all I want to record this transaction, I cannot straight away record. Apart from going ahead with all the required basic settings, the first thing, I need to create a salary account. I need to create a bank account. Now in this way, what are the various accounts which are required for the particular company? These accounts I'll be creating, and it's only after that we'll be going into posting of these transactions. So the primary responsibility in the general ledger will be, I'll say, the creation of accounts, creation of GL accounts. My salary account is one GL account, and then we'll be getting into a recording of all the activities or posting of transactions. Now, it's not that the focus will be only on the recording of day-to-day activities. We'll be getting into interest calculation also. So when I say interest calculation, let's say my company has taken a bank loan on which the bank is calculating some interest, or let's say my company is going with some fixed deposits. On this also my company has to calculate some interest. So how do we do this activity? So in SAP, we'll not be calculating and will not be posting the entry manually. We'll be running a small interest process. The system will calculate and system will post that entry automatically. So how does that process work in SAP? So we'll be concentrating on that particular part, apart from posting of all these activities, and wherever there are any errors, we'll try to rectify those errors also. Okay. That's the second important area. And once we complete it, we'll be getting into the next important area. We call it as accounts payables. So when we say accounts payables, the focus will be on all my credit transactions, or I'll say, just 1 minute. I have to just rectify this because, as I told you, this is not my system. But tomorrow, everything will be rectified. I just wanted to take today's session. That's why I just logged into this using this particular system. So when you say accounts payables, the focus will be on the credit purchases. So when I say credit purchases, let's say my company is buying the material from 2 different vendors. There is someone like vendor X. He's supplying me some 1 lakh worth of material in USD. And there's someone like vendor Y who is supplying me some 2 lakhs worth of material, let's say. Now, from accounting point of view, I need 2 informations. Firstly, what is the total amount which I'm supposed to pay to all the vendors? Now, this information from the accounting point of view, we'll be calling it as sundry creditors or creditors for raw material. Call this as, what's the sense? To say creditors for raw material. So this will be 3 lakhs in this particular case. I can get the total value, that is, what is the total amount which I'm supposed to pay to all the vendors, and what are the individual values, how much amount I'm supposed to pay to vendor X and vendor Y. Both these informations I can get from my accounts payable. Now this is only a general information which I have given. In this way, internally we'll be discussing about a lot of scenarios. Like if you make advance payment to the vendor, or let's say the vendor is giving you some cash discount, or you're making some installment payments, how all these scenarios are going to work. We'll be discussing about all those things one by one in the accounts payable module. That will be our third important area in the FI side. Okay. Now, let me take you to a new page. Once we complete this, we'll be getting into the fourth important area, very much similar to what we have done in the payables. So here, the focus will be on the receivables part. Whatever we have done in the payables, almost the same kind of activity we'll be doing in the receivables also. The fourth area which we'll be talking about is about accounts receivables. Let me put that in. Accounts receivables. So quite obviously, the focus will be on the credit sales. Now that doesn't mean that we're not going to talk anything about cash. Cash is also a part of it. But in any organization, almost about 80 to 90% of activities will be on credit. That's why the focus is more on credit purchases. Like let's say my company is selling the goods to customer A. Let's say this much amount. And to customer B, let's say it's selling. Now from accounting point of view, once again I need the total value. What is the total amount which I'm supposed to pay to all of them, or I'm supposed to receive from all the customers? This information from the accounting point of view, we'll be calling it as sundry debtors. So from my receivables module, I'll be getting every information related to the debtors. We'll call this as sundry debtors. So in this particular case, the total amount which we are supposed to receive is this much. So internally we'll be discussing a lot of different scenarios once again from the receivable side also. We'll be talking about once again the advance payments. We are generating any kind of letters to the customers. If we want to send them to the customers, how do we generate these letters? We'll be talking about all those things in the receivable side. And the fifth area which we'll be talking about, this will be about, I'll say, asset accounting. So when I say asset accounting, the focus will be on the fixed assets. Items like plant and machinery, or let's say something like my buildings, etc. So what we're trying to do here, we'll be understanding about the life cycle of a fixed asset. So when I say life cycle, the life cycle of any asset starts with asset purchase. Let's say we have used this asset for some time, then we went with asset addition. Say we have added a new asset to the existing asset addition. Then let's say we have gone ahead with asset sale, the third activity. Asset sale. We went ahead with asset scrap. Now in all these situations, this is nothing but the life cycle, right from asset purchase till the stage of asset scrapping. What are all the things which are happening in the life of the asset? We call it as the life cycle of an asset, and at every stage, how is my depreciation getting affected? That's the most important part which we'll be talking about here. What is the method? What is the rate? Again, there is no manual depreciation here, though the option is given, but we'll never be using the manual calculation. We'll be running a small process. The system will calculate and system will post an entry automatically. So how does this process work? We'll be talking about this particular activity in the asset accounting process. And then the last area which we'll be talking about, there's a concept known as new GL. I put that here. The sixth important area, new general ledger, which we call as new GL. Like let's say my company, it wants to generate the financial statements as per the local GAAP, that is local accounting principles, and it wants to generate the financial statements as per IFRS also. IFRS is International Financial Reporting Standards. So when I want to generate the financial statements as per different accounting principles, then I'll be depending on a concept known as the new GL. So these are the things which we are going to discuss in the FI side. Okay. Now once we complete the FI, we'll be going into the second important area. That will be the CO part. That's the controlling part. So let me take you to a new page. I'm not saving it. Just give me a minute. So when we say controlling, FI, the primary objective was to generate the financial statements. That is my profit and loss statement and balance sheet. Now that is something which will be generating at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter. Now I cannot depend only on my profit and loss statement and balance sheet because I'm generating that at the end of the year. So I need to have an alternate source of information for my decision making. That's where we'll be coming to the CO side. That's your controlling. In general terminology, this is your costing, what we call as management account. Now what is the objective here? This is something which is required for internal decision making. Internal decision. Let me put that here. Just bring in that. This is something which is needed for. Just a minute. So the focus will be on the internal decisions here. Say, internal decisions. I can go ahead with some planning. If I want, I can go ahead with creating of budgets. I can generate some variance reports, and based on that I can go ahead with some important decisions. So for all such things I'll be depending on the controlling module. So here also we'll be starting with the basic settings of CO. Then we'll be talking about the cost center accounting. That's the second important area. So when I say cost center accounting, whenever I need any information, I'll say cost center wise, or cost center can be a department. When I want the information, I'll say department wise. Then I depend on my cost center. Department wise information I'll not be in a position to get from my profit and loss statement and balance sheet. That's why I'll be coming to the controlling side, and from my cost center accounting I'll be getting the information cost center wise. Then once we complete this, the third area which we'll be talking about is about internal orders. Now cost center is something which is going to give me information only at the department level, but at times my requirement is little more detailed. Like I want to have some information in a specific project. Like let's say I have a marketing department which is conducting, let's say, 2 activities. It is taking up project 1. Let's say it is conducting some advertisement campaign, and the second project, let's say it is undertaking an exhibition. Now the head of this department, I want to know what are the expenses which the company has incurred for the advertisement campaign, or what are the expenses which the company has incurred for the exhibition. So how do I get this information? I cannot depend on my cost centers. Cost center will give me information only up to this level. So within this cost center, for this particular project, what is the expenditure? And for this particular project, what is the expenditure? If I need such information, I have to depend on internal orders. That will be our next important activity. Okay. Then once we complete it, we'll be getting into the fourth important area. That will be, I'll put that on the other side. This is known as profit center account. So when I say a profit center, for a profit center there will be 2 things. First, there will be some revenues. I'm trying to get some income, and simultaneously I have to book some costs also. So my objective is, I'll be booking my revenues, I'll be booking my expenditure, and finally I'll try to find out whether this particular profit center is giving me profits or is it a loss making. Because if it is giving me losses, there's absolutely no point in calling it as a profit center. So such analysis I can do from my profit center account. But at times I might need some information a little more detailedly again. This information may not be sufficient for me. That's why I'll be coming to the fourth important area, which we call as profitability analysis. So when I say profitability analysis, let me take one small example. Let's say I'm taking the example of something like Dell laptops. I want to know how this product is being sold in a specific area. I'm taking a broader picture and say in a big city, something like New York. For a specific customer group, like I'll say students. For students, just give me a minute. Just one. For students, I'm taking another parameter actually there. Students, just 1 minute, please. Okay. For a specific month, actually, I'll take the month of, let's say, October. Now what we are trying to do here is we are trying to take 4 or 5 parameters: product wise, area wise, customer group wise, month wise. I'm trying to analyze the performance of a particular product. Now why do I need that information? Let's say this particular product is not sold properly in this particular area, for this particular customer group, for this particular month. Then I can think of taking some kind of action. How do I increase the sales? Now when can I do that? Only when I have information about that. So for such information, I'll be depending on profitability analysis. And one final thing which we'll be discussing once we complete this, that will be what we call as the integration. We'll be linking 2 or 3 departments. That is something which we call as the integration of the finance and the materials department. I'll say integration of FIMM, that's finance department linked with the materials department, and FISD, finance department linked with sales and distribution. So in this whole process, we'll be understanding certain things from the material side and certain things from the sales and distribution side also. Roughly about, I'll say about 10 to 20% of the other modules also we have to understand. So as a finance person, what are the things which we are going to do? Those things we'll be understanding in this whole process. So on a step-by-step process, we'll be understanding all these things. Okay? So this is something about what we are going to do in the whole course actually. On a step-by-step process, we'll be understanding. So we'll be getting into all the 3 roles on a step-by-step process. Okay? So this is something from my side for today. If you have any questions, we can spend some time. So till here, I hope things are fine.
Yes, it's fine. So far, I don't have question.
So I was just giving you an overview of what are all the things which we are going to discuss in this whole course actually. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll do one thing. From our tomorrow session, we'll try to log into the SAP system and we'll try to do some activities directly in the system. I'll first explain you, then I'll try to show that in the system.
Okay.
So today I'll stop it here.
Okay.
Okay then. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.